Hey family, it's Christina
and Kaden
with Urban Finance, where we give you tips and tricks to pay off debt and to build wealth. And in today's video, we're going to talk about why we paid off $120,000 worth of debt. And it was super important for us to be debt-free so that we can actually start building wealth.
Absolutely. And what most people don't realize is the why is just as important and even sometimes more important than the how you go about doing that. And we're going to explain in this video exactly why we paid off $120,000 of debt. But we also have another video if you want to check that out on how we did it. We'll link that right up here. And before we jump in, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to be notified when we post something new.
Ramsey popularized the notion that becoming good with finances is 80% behavior and 20% knowledge. And this is why the why is so important, because the why drives that 80% behavior and the how is the 20%. And looking back at it, it's easy for us to say that the how is less important now that we're debt free. However, we know that it's because we had our whys is what drove us to stick to our plan and to become debt free.
Precisely, that's perfect. The reason the why is so important, because when you're on your debt-free journey, there are so many things that are coming against you to stop you. And these things are all hindrances. And I call them financial leeches. And these financial leeches comes in all forms, shapes, and sizes. And for my family that's out there, maybe financial leeches may be too aggressive, because sometimes your friends and family are those things. Not because they desire money from you, but because sometimes they're asking you to go on trips or vacations, or maybe to the Cayman Islands, and to any family members that may have invited me to the Cayman Islands. Love y'all. But there's so much that you can do with your friends and your family that will hinder you from achieving those goals. And having that why is probably the only thing that are gonna allow you to say no to friends and families when you really want to do those things more than you want to actually focus on your debt-free journey. And so I encourage anyone, when you're on this journey, make sure you know exactly what your why is, because that's sometimes the only thing that can keep you going when everyone else is living the life now that you would like to live. So my first why is actually my unborn son. And even though I have a son now, at the time he was still yet just a thought in our minds. And he wasn't even conceived or even in her belly yet, but I've always had the foresight that I wanted to provide my son with a certain type of lifestyle. And there were a lot of obstacles and challenges that I had to overcome that made me a stronger person, but I didn't necessarily want my son to overcome those challenges. And we knew that by making sure we pay off our debt, we can put him in a solid foundation. I know a lot of people say that you're never ready to have a kid, especially financially, but I can honestly say, because we were able to pay off this money, because we were able to pay off $120,000 in debt and become debt-free before our son was here, we really felt, at least financially, we were perfectly prepared to become a parent. And I know as a black man growing up, he will have a lot of challenges in life and a lot of hurdles to overcome that will strengthen him. And I did not want finances to be one of those hurdles that he had to overcome. That was a why that drove me day and night, and honestly kept me up and probably woke me up a lot of times at 4 a.m. in the morning to start working and to keep grinding and to think of ways how I can bring in more money in order to make sure he has the best life possible. And now he's here, I am very happy for that why and that why driving me.
And even beyond our son, our second why was because we wanted to leave a legacy. And so not only did we want our son to be financially secure, we wanted to build enough wealth so that his son and his son's son will be able to have financial freedom as well. And even beyond just our family, we wanted to leave a legacy in terms of being able to help people, whether it's donating to different charities or donating to our church or donating to different people in need. Just knowing that we'd have that opportunity to provide and to help others was a huge reason of why we paid off that $120,000 worth of debt so that we can build wealth and be able to give to others. For we truly believe in the proverb, to whom much is given, much is required. And we live by that, we walk in that, and that's why we paid off our debt.
Yeah, and to some respect, especially when it comes to the business realm and making money, a lot of times black women have it even harder. And so we don't know if we'll have a daughter, but if we do have a daughter, we want to make sure that she is also placed on solid financial foundation. There's a lot that we may not be able to do for her as well, but there are some things that we can do as parents for our unborn daughter. So let's see if we have a daughter next.
And our third why was our marriage. So we Googled, and money fights is the third leading cause of divorce. We won't talk about the first two, that's another video. But we wanted to be able to have financial security in our marriage.
Yeah, one of the most important things for me, and I'm sure my wife feels this way, is protecting our marriages. And there's a lot that we need to protect our marriage against. And so financially, one of the things that we could have done to protect our marriage and did do and understood while we were even getting engaged, that one of the things we wanted to do to protect our marriage is place ourselves on some solid financial foundations so that this doesn't have to be one of the places of tensions within our marriage. And I think we were able to do that a lot and largely in part by paying off our debt. Now, my wife is one of the most amazing people in the world. I love her to death. And even though we are in such solid financial foundations, we still have, our challenges and I would say our discussions. It is not anything that is hard for us to overcome because we are really in really good financial grounds. And so I remember just last week, or it could be earlier this week, we were talking about how much money we wanted to put aside for our child's college fund. And my wife said, I said that, maybe $100,000 for his undergrad degree. And then my wife said, okay, yeah, that sounds good. $100,000 for his undergrad degree and maybe another $400,000 for his graduate degree. And I had to control my emotions because, I was like, $400,000 for graduate school?
So in my mind, it wasn't necessarily $400,000 for his graduate degree, but I was thinking about room and board, also maybe even having an apartment if he lived off campus. Like I was thinking books. I was thinking about all other expenses for undergrad and graduate school. So not necessarily just $400,000 for grad school. I know it's a lot of money, but I like to be prepared.
And there's nothing wrong with being prepared. And this is a financial discussion that is actually, to me, fun to have. It's like, how much money do we want to give to our son or leave to our son? Where my mind naturally goes is, okay, maybe $100,000 for undergrad and $400,000 to start a billion-dollar business. But this is not a bad conversation to have. Now, I know we are in the midst of a pandemic and that a lot of people lost their jobs, sometimes one spouse, sometimes both spouses. And if that couple isn't on solid financial foundation, a lot of times, a lot of arguments can come as a result of it. And even sometimes people aren't meaning to say things that are demeaning to each other, but when someone lost a job and you look at your husband, you look at your wife and say something that kind of implies they aren't a provider, that instantly creates tension in your marriage. And when you're debt free, when you no longer have that burden, a lot of those tensions go away.
Yeah, I remember when we had first paid off our debt, it just felt like a weight had been lifted. We were making a lot of sacrifices in order to become debt free, and I didn't realize how much strain there was between us while we were paying off debt. I even had to get off Facebook because I saw my friends living their best life, and I'm like, I'm in here just eating dinner, cooking all the time, I can't go out. But just having that weight lifted was such a huge help for our marriage.
Yeah, no, I honestly wouldn't necessarily want to have gone through this pandemic if we had all of that debt, because one of the things we're very happy about is that if either of us lose our job, because our expenses is so low because we don't have any debt, that we won't even need to touch our emergency fund to cover our expenses. And so especially after we pay off our house, then we really won't have much financial concerns in the world. And so it is so important. People don't necessarily understand how much pressure is relieved from you when you have very little debt. And that's one of the things that, we try to tell people. It's not necessarily about the math that if we invested the money that we plan to put into our house into even an S&P 500, a fund, that will grow more. No, it's the burden, it's the relief that we have if we go through another pandemic, or if something else far off in the future happens, that we don't necessarily have to worry about certain things that the average person have to worry about.
And we didn't make this video to brag about paying off $120,000 worth of debt. We want to encourage you that no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what sacrifices you're making, it is worth it. Know your why. Know that if we can pay off debt, you can become debt-free too.
Yeah, and so there are so many challenges that you will have to overcome while you're on your debt-free journey. And this video is all about telling you it is worth it. No matter what everyone else is doing in their life, no matter if you feel like everyone is living their best life or not, you taking on this challenge to become debt-free is worth it. It will pay dividends if you're married 5, 10, 15 years and you're married. It will pay dividends if you have a child or a grandchild. It will help you in your life in ways that you cannot even imagine. And one of the things I think about is that the fact that our son will always have a safety net in us. He doesn't have to depend on the government for his safety net. And what that does, it frees him up to dream and be all that he can be. You see, a lot of times people aren't willing to take chances because if they know when they fall, they're going to drop flat on their face, they're not going to take those difficult chances. They're not going to make those difficult decisions. They're not going to try to start a business when it's so much easier to go work for a company. But because our son will know, no matter how high he tried to reach, that if he falls, his parents are in a place to catch him, that alone frees his mind up to do the impossible. And I'm telling you, that will do the same for you. That will do the same for your family. This is why it's so important to struggle and strive to become debt-free.
So remember, family, we love you.
And live your best life. But while you're doing that, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and like I said, check out this video on how we did it. But remember, the why is just as important and sometimes even more important than the how.